Welcome to the show today. Today I have Mathias Wegmüller on the show, who's the founder of Qumram, and they just had an exit about 3 months ago or so. And so it's a very interesting story that we're going to dive into, regarding that specific topic as well. We're going to talk a little bit about your story, about the future as well. So let's dive right in. Matthias, tell us a little bit more about who is Matthias and what's your story that got you to where we are today?
Well, thanks, Daniel, for being on your show. I'm super excited to talk to you today. Myself, put me in context, in the Qumram context. I founded that in 2011. 4 years before that, I quit being an employed. I started my own consulting company. It was called Dankplatz. We actually also exited that in 2017, but I was just a non-operative partner for the last few years. So the Qumram story really starts 2011. It was Simon and a couple other friends back then. There were four of us who said, let's do that. Let's build an enterprise software company, which had an easy goal. We said, hey, look, the digital age is it's all on the web. But it disappears. It's so volatile. We had numbers out there, every URL after about an average of 6 months was not actually online actual anymore. So we had the idea at the very beginning to build a web archive to actually keep that. And it was a customer need. It was a Swiss customer, Suva, the insurance company, who said, hey, we need exactly such a solution. We need to keep track what we publish because we want to communicate over our website. It's our main communication stream, but we always have the disclaimer, whatever we say on the website is actually not reliable and not binding, which is a big joke because on one hand, you want to have it as the main communication stream, but on the other hand, you cannot rely on it. So the compliance officer, very rare species of compliance officer, very innovative, future thinking. He said, hey, we need to keep record of that. This is how it started. And I think, if you have the chance as an entrepreneur to actually start with a business need, with a demand from the market, it's the best situation because quite often you start the other way around. You have a great technology idea. You think you know how the future is going to look like, but you don't know how the market is going to react to it. So we were very fortunate from the start that we know that we need at least one compliance officers at Suva shared the same vision as we had. And this is how we started. And then, it's the normal thing. You just start, what do you need? Okay, we need someone who builds the software. Okay, we need someone in delivery who delivers the project. So who in our group can do that best? As I said, we were four, one really into tech, the three others more into customer relation, project management, and that's how we went. And it was cool because after Suva, we had interests from all the big Swiss players. There was CSS and other insurance. There was Zürcher Kantonalbank. There was UBS. So we were on a good roll in the start. We thought, hey, look, this is going to be a piece of cake, so to say. And we did many different things at the time. I started my own family. The other ones, we had our own office. And then, of course, after about the first 12 months, we hit the first downsize because UBS got delayed, no other contracts were coming in, and that's just the normal cycle, and that happened, in the 6-12 months again and again. And then, then entrepreneur really starts because being on the roll, winning deals, that's all easy. But when it gets hard, then when it sees how do we do it. And then team communication, super important. Communication with the customer. We were all bootstrapped, so we were doing some consulting projects on the side to keep us through those downturns. We had one employee, two employees back then. We always managed to pay their salaries. We stepped down paying out our salaries. Then you have to negotiate at home. tell your wife why salary is not coming this month, might not be coming next month. And you just got to be prepared for those situations. Otherwise, you're too much worried about these very existential stuff instead of focusing really winning the next deal.
Now, this is, I mean, if I just can jump in there, I love how vividly you talk about that. Obviously, it's still very fresh on your memory because there was a lot of emotions involved. It's very vivid. And I mean, there's a couple of just points that I want to elaborate here that I think are so important. I mean, one of them is, not looking at entrepreneurship or like, company growth or anything as a straight line. It's like, just go like, okay, let's start this off and, let's stop everything else and just like, let's just do that and everything. But always sort of like, always be aware that, okay, it's a very bumpy road. You have actually no idea at all what's there, what will be in 3 months or 6 months or in 12 months at all. And yes, you're working with a very clear strategy and goals and vision and everything, right? And great team and everything. But at the end of the day, you just simply don't know where it's going. And like the way you talk about it, it's just so interesting because I've rarely heard people talk about it in that way, to also look at maybe the dark side of entrepreneurship or whatever. Entrepreneurship is an incredibly exciting thing, right? Yep. But you also want to paint it in a realistic picture, and not just with all the fluff around it. So I really appreciate that. So let's dive a bit more into the next phase. I also want to hear a bit more about the downturn there. Like, how do you cope with something like that personally? How do you communicate things like that to all the stakeholders involved as well?
Yeah. No, I think that's the key. As I said, it's you can look at sports. Look at a tennis career. I mean, in men's tennis, it's super obvious these days. They're all injured. They're off court for half a year, and only if you are passionate, you will come back. Only if you have the love for the sport or the love for your business, you will be back. Because everyone has the downside, and I always say, I can tell the entrepreneur, the ones I really believe they are entrepreneurs, they tell me about their downsides and how they got out of it. And we had split up in our team in the end because part of our original 4, they didn't want to go through that, or they didn't believe that we're going to get up again and stand up again and go international, actually go after our dreams. Because it's hard, but I tell you, it's worth it, and it's in Silicon Valley. And that was always the big discussion. We talked to Silicon Valley companies, and they said, "Hey, look, within the first 3 years, if you don't hit those numbers, you're not going to make it. Put it down, get after your next idea, restart from scratch." And I think this is a Swiss, this is a European thing. No, you gotta. It sometimes takes longer. And there is a number for Swiss European companies. It says it takes 10 years to establish a B2B software company. If you look at the big players in the financial industries like the Avalogs, the Upways, the established fintech players, it's true for them. In the end, and we'll talk about that later, we exited after 6.5 years, maybe a bit early. Some say, I would say, was right, just the perfect time. But that means it is a long if to actually get there. And you got to be aware. Especially if you're super young, if you start straight from university, you got to know. And I think it's better that you know yourself than an investor will tell you later down the road, because then it's coming from the outside, and either this coach is super good and you accept him as a coach, or then it will do some damage on your personality and on your motivation level.
I find that really interesting, that the time period as well. I mean, nobody ever talks about that. It's always like, 3 years, and it's just, you gotta hit big and all that and everything. And I find it really interesting in the Swiss culture because, as Swiss, we both are Swiss, and we've grown up in a culture where it's really about step by step. Don't think too big, it's just like very small. And then you have that Silicon Valley, which is 180 degrees on the other side. And I find it really interesting when those extremes come together and you can embrace both sides. And I feel like that's what you've done. And that's also why you're able to talk about this in that way, because there's always, I call it the incubation period, which is like the whole, idea phase and everything, where nothing really happens and everything forms and here and this and, detaches again and together again and away again and everything. There's always that period that nobody talks about. Like whenever I talk to founders, like, so when did you start it? And they go like, well, we had the idea in 2008 and then in 2011, we, established a company and this and that. Or there's always that incubation period that nobody ever talks about. It's not visible anywhere except in these conversations.
Yeah, well, let me quickly elaborate on Silicon Valley and take some myth out of it. I mean, Silicon Valley is not big global. It's super local. It's 17 kilometers long. There is enough market. There is enough VC. All you have to do is go out there and meet all the people. So this is a local play. Silicon Valley is not a global play. It's just where it's happening. That doesn't mean it's easy. It's a shark's tank. You got to be among the best, etc. But if you're there, and I would really encourage every young Swiss entrepreneur to spend at least some time. And if he has the chance, and if his life situation allows him to relocate and do it there, I think it's the best place, because it is all there. It doesn't involve a lot of travel. The market is there. The money is there. Do it from there. If you do it here, I think we always had in mind, we want to build an international company. We always said we want to win customers on each and every continent. And then, of course, it gets a lot harder. Distance, logistic is one. Cultural diversity is the next one. Silicon Valley, that's one culture. It's all positive. We're all going to change the world for the better. If you look at it, they're only going to change the world for the better for the few rich who can actually pay for their services. So I would really like to take this myth a bit down, and I will go about that, because now the company Dynatrace is actually a non-Silicon Valley US company, and the two main competitors are Silicon Valley companies. So this is a very vivid talk also in my today's life. So that's Silicon Valley. Take some learnings out of that, but then do it wherever you're headquartered, wherever your locations are, and take those specialities. And in the end, it's the customer, right? It's the buyer's market. So if your customer is a US Silicon Valley based customer, you got to be closer to that. If your investor is a Silicon Valley minded VC, you better be prepared for that as well. We did our financing rounds mainly in Switzerland, but we had some European investors as well. Largest one money-wise was a Spanish investor. And let me quickly go on that. We decided to actually have the R&D center, the production of our software in Barcelona. That's why we also acquired the investor from Spain who said, hey, look, you are bringing big benefits to the Spanish economy, and with our center in Barcelona, that's a big contribution. And in the end, when we exited, we were close to 40 people, and half of them actually in Barcelona. And maybe again on this diversity culture, not just being Silicon Valley, but being Swiss headquartered. Talking several languages by nature, because we have to go out. The market is not big enough in Switzerland. We said from the start, let's also build an international team. If we only look in our friend circle and take the Swiss employees, we're not going to manage to build an international company. So, and I think especially in the fintech space in Switzerland, you see quite a lot of startups who have the same mindset. And I think that's a success factor. But it's also a big challenge cultural wise, because it takes more time to explain. Quick example, Spanish employees, when there is a holiday, when there is a weekend, that's not working. They have all a very startup spirit and everything, but the culture says, hey, weekend, holiday, it's family time. And we sometimes had releases and we had bug fixes, and we needed them to come in on a Saturday, Sunday, and it just ended up in big cultural clashes and a lot of discussions. And we weren't good enough to manage that on a personal level. So what we did, we mixed up the Barcelona team. We brought in a Ukrainian lead at one time. We had people from Cuba, from Sweden, from all over the world working for us in Barcelona. And with this diversity, we managed to change the culture at faster speed, and actually what we needed to deliver in time, and also on a Sunday if needed.
I love that. I mean, I love how, deep you go into the story of Qumram, how you built it, and the key lessons already there. Just taking one step back, talking about entrepreneurship in general. What's your why? Like, why did you get involved in entrepreneurship in this really bumpy road, in this very challenging, unpredictable, most uncertain field of all, I would say? I mean, why go through all the trouble?
In the end, what's the meaning of life? I say, look, if you take risks, if you're adventurous, you learn a lot more about yourself. You learn a lot more about the people you care about, and work is it doesn't matter if it's 30 hours a week, it's 40, if it's 50, 60, 70. It takes a large chunk out of your weekly life. And I rather do learn something in this time. And being an entrepreneur, it's much more in your hands, or at least you think, it's your perception that it's much more in your hands what you do during these hours. And of course you learn really a lot. And I'm not I get bored about politics, and I think in corporate worlds, in large organization, it's a lot about politics. It's a lot about positioning yourself, and that's just super not attractive. But as I said, I'm not choosing not to do things. I'm excited about the adventures, the learning. Brad Feld, he's one of my heroes, one of the co-founders of Techstars. His blog is amazing. So if you have a chance to go on feld.com and read some of his inputs, and he says, hey, look, do things, do the right things, do errors, learn every day. And that really drives me. And then I have kind of three always mantras which in my head. And I say, dream big is the first one. You got to do that. And that's exciting for everyone, building those castles in your mind. That's exciting for everyone. Second one, I cannot do it myself. I'm a team player, and I need the strong team around. So surround yourself with good people. Second one, and then the third one is just get shit done. Just in everyday life, just do it. Just like we do it now, the interview. Just get it done. Make the best of it. Be prepared, and have it recorded, and then share it. And the same with every pitch. It doesn't matter if it's in front of an investor, in front of a customer, if it's for an award. Qumram went really down and said, hey, look, it's also cool to win awards, to be on stage, but it takes some time. It's just a 7-minute, 5-minute, you have to be there. And do it as good as you can, and you learn a lot.
I love those three. Yeah. I love those three. In terms of the story, I want to dive a little bit more into the phases, because you had different phases at the company. You mentioned last time, there was also a big dip phase, and then we had the exit. So let's quickly elaborate on that, and then go a bit more into the exit story.
Yeah, I would say let's put phase one. I already touched on that. Fully bootstrapped, small team. We even outsourced our core competence of the software development. We had that with a strong partner here in Switzerland. And then second one was really, hey, dream big was not just a bootstrapped, slow-growing Swiss company, but we wanted to go international. In this second phase, that came Barcelona, came to it. We added development and quality assurance out of India. We were going after German customers, partnership in the UK, And then we realized, hey, we're not going to manage through bootstrapping. So the entire investment acquisition came to it. As it was also the time when I stepped down being the CEO and brought Patrick into the company. Patrick had a big corporate and also entrepreneurial background, working a lot in the US. He was a big help also in finding the investor, in adding to the team. So this was phase 2, really getting the money from investors, going international, winning the customers, building up Barcelona. So that's the second phase. And then third one was just growth. Actually executing on what we had invested on. And right in this period, there came interests from buyers, and one of them being Dynatrace. And it was not on our plan to have the exit at this stage, but you always have to be open and look at the interest. And their story, why they want to buy us, was so convincing. And the story for our team and to go our dream, to go international, go with the fastest team, was so attractive. It was a good story for the investors. So we said, yes, let's do it. Let's start the next chapter. And that's now Dynatrace.
Now, that's really interesting. What you mentioned there in terms of exit. I mean, first of all, you said it wasn't on the plan for that year, obviously. Always, look out for, always have an open eye for opportunities. That's one thing. But the other thing is the alignment between, Qumram and Dynatrace, what you mentioned in terms of the stories, in terms of the alignment, I would say, because you had a vision, you have a very clear vision about the organization. And usually when there's an acquisition, that vision is gone, because it's like, we want to acquire you because we want your users, we want your talent, and, then it's all integrated and literally integrated, and it's gone basically, right? But what you accepted basically was the alignment, where you said, okay, so you guys actually, the story why you want to buy is more about what our vision actually is, instead of just an exit itself. And I find that really interesting.
Yeah, well, they're different levels, and I quickly can share that with you. So we were, our position is, we were going to be number one in RegTech, regulatory technology in the fintech space. We were doing quite well on that track, really going after this niche market of digital compliance in the financial service. Dynatrace is not interested in financial service only. They have a broad, all across industry. So that's already not a perfect alignment. And compliance is definitely not their first, probably not their second, not third priority. They are the best in IT monitoring. And so their vision is going with the Qumram technology, going into in the user experience, in improvement in the entire digital transformation process. And so it's, if you look at it at first glance, it might not be the perfect visionary go-to-market alignment, but what it is, and that's what they were super convincing, and that's why I say it's probably more important, there is a perfect cultural fit between the tech heads and how R&D is built in those two companies. It's all super modern, very agile, continuous deployment, bringing out new release as fast as you can. So our Barcelona R&D team and their R&D teams, which are based in Linz, Austria, Danzig, Gdańsk, Poland, and Detroit, US, they share the same vision, how perfect software is delivered. And the market use case is a different one. And so there, I think you have to be, as an entrepreneur, you don't have to be too proud of yourself and, and kind of let go of where you were heading, because there is a bigger fish to fry, or there is a larger opportunity. It's all of a sudden not just your niche market compliance in the financial industry, but it's all industries, global, and a lot more use cases. And I think that's a tough one as an entrepreneur, because it's you bring your family, you bring your team into something much bigger. Or number-wise, we were 40, and now it's 1,600. So it's 40 times bigger than what we were before. And only if you manage to say, hey, me, myself, or our team, we are just part of something bigger, and it's not us, it's not Qumram what changed the world, but Qumram or the former Qumram can contribute to a bigger story, to a bigger case, and I think this is right where we are. This is super exciting. I don't know for how long, because maybe, as I said before, maybe it will get a bit too much into politics as well, and then it's time, definitely time, at least for me, to move on. But at the moment, I think it's a super excited journey, and positive for the next few months and years. That's what I'll be doing.
I mean, I love the exit story there, because I mean, it's in total alignment with your second life principle, basically. You know, I can't do it. We can't do it ourselves. We can't do it alone. I mean, the way you talk about it, and you say, well, you know, it's not just because so many entrepreneurs at one point, they get so maybe proud or ego driven that it's like, okay, we're the best, and you know, we gotta run through the walls ourselves and everything, even though there would be somebody standing next to them that could build an actual door, you know. So as a metaphor, and you said, okay, if that's really true for me, and if I really believe that we can't do it ourselves, and this is a great opportunity, but it requires a different angle to look at an exit, not saying, okay, market fit is the number one priority, because usually that's how companies do it. Like, they buy a company and then they try to integrate the cultures, which usually doesn't work, right? So you looked at it and you said, okay, if we want to make this work, then starting from an alignment with culture makes a lot more sense, you know, because if all these guys in the tech area, in the company specifically, can actually work together, and they have the same vision and they have the same way of looking at things already, then an integration on the market side is, well, it's not rocket science at the end of the day, and it may create an entirely new space for Dynatrace. It's a bit like saying, you know, in the digital transformation, a bit like saying, let's start with technology first, or let's start with people first, right? I mean, what makes more sense? Almost everybody gets it, that it makes more sense with people, but in the exit, I think it's a quite new or different way of looking at it.
And I mean, there really a lot of credit to Dynatrace, and that's in the end why we agreed. I mean, they did a really proper market validation. They looked at 30 session recording and replay tools. We came up on top from technology standpoint, and again, that's Swiss engineers, Swiss design. We never would have placed. We would probably have said we are top 3. But then, you know, really being number 1 evaluated by a top tech company globally, that's great. And that's, at the end, that was the biggest asset we created, or at least the one that was valued highest at the exit. And then the second part, as you said, but they looked at the culture and they did it in a very good way. So they brought their tech leads into Barcelona prior to the acquisition, and they had a lot of chats. So we went, and I want to share that because I think it's good for entrepreneurs. How do you handle a situation like this? So we told our Barcelona team, because you cannot really say, because negotiation only started, you cannot say that that's gonna end in an exit. So we said, we're looking at partnership, we're looking at building a joint venture, and for that we need to see how the teams work together, how technology works together, and we had workshops. And they were super impressed how open our team was, and not sticking to, hey, no, our tech is the best, we would not adapt, let's see what is the best of both worlds. And again, there I come back to why was that possible? Diversity. We didn't only have the Spanish, because the Spanish by nature, by culture, they're super proud, and they would always put their tech always first. I would say Swiss engineers, a bit similar. But we had the Eastern Europe influence, we had the Cuban influence, we had the coolness of the Swedes. So they kind of said, hey, let's be not so personal about tech. It's just tech. Let's really look at the best thing. And I think this is key. And also down the road for this Barcelona team, they are now growing from 15 people. In the next 2 years is the plan to grow up to 50. And internationalism in recruiting will be key. And that's what I really encourage every entrepreneur. It's more interesting, you know, not to learn all the different languages, but to see how people are approaching work, what their ideas are, and I think it's also easier to see yourself not as the center of the universe and less egoistic if you touch on all these different cultures and rituals and the way people want to have a beer after work, etc.
Makes life a lot easier if you don't take yourself too serious. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
One step I just quickly want to one step back into the growth phase, because there's always growth pains, that come with growth. So I'm curious about how you work together as founders of the company or as the management team itself. Did you start out and continue to do that way in terms of your roles and responsibilities, and said it's very, very clear defined, and that's how you worked, in terms of responsibilities, in terms of expertise in areas and things like that? Or was that always a lot of overlay, or like which route did you go, and how did you make sure that not everybody's working on the same thing, that everybody's covered, and that sort of that there's a synchronizing way of working that actually contributes to the greater vision?
Yeah, it's a super interesting question, and not an easy one to answer. We had the chance that in our team we had a lot of generalists, so to say, people who are capable of being on stage or planning a marketing campaign or doing execution on sales or even deliver the project, or in R&D actually be on the core development team or be on the customer side delivering. So we had, and I think that's natural for the beginning of the startup. You have more generalists. And then with the growth phase, we started to hire specialists. So we had special engineers for certain technology in Barcelona. We had 2 marketing experts in the UK, which have had a marketing career all their life. And then, of course, they are more specialized. The founders, we kept our general approach, and I think that's important, because you have to jump across those gardens and just keep the bigger vision. And then, or in the organization, you in the points or in the domains where you're mature enough, you can go after the experts and then really hire those. And I think we did that in 2 areas. One was R&D and the project delivery. So actually 2 technical ones, and then in marketing. In sales, we still had, and I was heading that, we still had a very general approach, and we worked a lot with partners and freelancer sales in this part of the organization, just also to keep the cost of sales at a reasonable level.
That's a very interesting way of going about it. Also, when it's growing, of how do you expand it in terms of the people you work with, in terms of the different models you work with, and you chose a couple of different models there, which was really interesting. And also saying, well, there are responsibilities, but it's always going to be it's always going to be shared at the end of the day for the greater vision.
Yeah, and that's key. For me, it doesn't matter if to build up a strong team which goes in the same direction. For me, it's not important that they're all on your payroll. I know there is different opinion out there, but I say, hey, look, you can work with freelancer, with part-time people, as long as they share your vision and they believe that we can move something greater. It also works. Of course, from a management perspective, it gets harder. If you have one person 100% under control under your payroll, but for me, that's very old school looking of management. For me, the new way is, hey, we have to excite people. And even a person who only works 20-30%, that means 1.5 days per week for you. If she or he is super excited, she will free herself or find ways that she can work more and more, because this 1.5 days is the best day of her week. And this, as a founder, as a leader, that's where you have to go. And then everything gets much easier. And of course, again, in a successful scenario, in a winning, in a growing scenario, easy. In a losing, decreasing scenario, much harder. But that's like, that's like sports.
Yeah.
It's life. It's sports. if you have the momentum going, but you have to always, you have to build small momentums. For us, it was, of course, during the last 3 years, it was winning a lot of awards because that was an easy play for us. And that also gives motivation. Is that adding net cash to your P&L? No, it's not. But it gets everyone excited. It's exciting for the investors, etc. So you need to find those. Some people have a super strong culture, in building team events. We were a bit too old. We all had family at home, so we couldn't do so many team events, beer at 5. That was just out of our options to build this momentum, to build this culture. But I think you need to find this, and it can be in many aspects. And don't only look at it from winning deals or increasing numbers, because that's in the end it's the most important metric. But there are others.
I find that really interesting. But there's sort of like 2 levels how to work with an organization. There's income and there's asset. I mean, what you talked about is asset level, because, at the end of the day, the brand itself is the asset. It doesn't generate direct income into the P&L, right? It's not income, but it's an asset. And at the end of the day, when it comes to exit or anything, or, or leverage or trade or anything like that, asset is key. Income is key to sort of like get you above the water and keep you above the water, right? Which is nice and everything. That's really important. But then asset is sort of, that's where the leverage is. And I love that you pointed this out. Yeah. Now, I just wanted to say thank you so much for diving into the story. Maybe 1 or 2 last thoughts from your side, maybe 1 or 2 last things that you wanted to share before we wrap up.
Yeah, maybe 2 lessons learned. I would say people is really key in the beginning and when recruiting and hiring, and we knew that. But there is never enough time and energy you can put into that. So for everyone, really take that super serious. I think whoever is in charge for hiring and HR should be one of the top person in your company. That's one thing. We did great. We had super people, but we could have done even better. And this is also true now being in a larger organization. And the second one is we had the vision, as I said, we wanted to build a global software company. We wanted to have customers on every continent, and that was driving us. That was helping us in the recruiting strategy as well. But we didn't really have the finish line. So we didn't know, like what happened now with Dynatrace, that was really not on our agenda. So it took us by nice surprise, but it was not really there. And I think it's important to kind of say, hey, look, my long-term goal is to win that or go to that phase. And then if we reach that, we want to go into a large organization, or we want to do an IPO, or, kind of talk about it in circles. This might change, but have this finish line in mind, because it helps. And then especially if you're in the discussion of crossing this finish line, you've already talked about it. And we had to do it in a super fast way because we haven't before. And so we had to do that in a very short time towards the end of the Qumram game.
Love that. Love that. Yeah. Very big lessons, especially in entrepreneurship, but also in life in general. So, thank you so much. What I'm going to do is I'm going to link below the video to some sources to learn more about what you guys are working on, with Dynatrace, and also a bit more about you and, with the LinkedIn, just connecting to the LinkedIn profile and things like that. So, sure. Once again, thank you so much for being on the show. Really appreciate you having here, and have a great day.
Yeah, and again, my last call out. Thanks, Daniel. Thanks everyone who might be watching that and reach out to me. You can also put my contact details. I would say LinkedIn is probably the best source. I'm more than happy, to share my little experience and maybe I can help out some of you. So that would be great.